Dear Mr. X, my name is Amanda. I wanted to let you know I've been binging on your channel. It's always good to hear from people who've witnessed unexplained events. It makes me feel less like a crazy person for having seen the thing I mentioned in the comments of one of your videos. As you requested, here's my story. I grew up in a house that was, and well, still is, haunted, I think. I moved out some years ago, but my mom still lives there. I honestly have no idea how she manages to stay there by herself. Throughout my life, there have been so many bizarre incidents there, from disembodied footsteps and voices, to objects moving around on their own, to constant bouts of sleep paralysis with their own host of horrors, even full-bodied apparitions seen by my cousin and I on 2 separate occasions. The sleep paralysis got so bad I had to start sleeping in my mom's bed and keep a nightlight on while I slept. I was simply too afraid to be in the dark alone. There is definitely something wrong with that house. The thing we briefly spoke about in the comments, though, the thing you asked me to write you about, I really don't know if I could call it an apparition. It was nothing like the quote-unquote ghosts I've seen and heard in the past. In fact, it's like nothing I've ever heard of before. That's actually the main reason I've been listening to so many of these paranormal stories. I'm searching for some kind of answer. No luck so far. I believe I was about 16 or 17 years old when I saw this thing. I was in my room with my dog, and we were both sitting on my bed. I was reading a school book, so I had my desk lamp on and plenty of light in the room for me to feel at ease. I had the TV on for some background noise. I remember hearing Jay Leno doing his monologue for The Tonight Show, and that they were featuring a band I wanted to hear. I'm telling you this to let you know why I've ruled out the possibility of sleep paralysis in this case. The room was pretty well lit, and I was wide awake. The desk with the lamp was situated right below a window in my room. I don't know if it's worth mentioning, but that window actually used to be a door before my dad remodeled the house. There also used to be concrete steps leading up to that door, which my dad also removed. Years ago, the house was basically divided into 3 separate apartment-style dwellings, with my room as the living room in one of them. The setup was all very strange. I guess they had to make do with the little space they had. As I was reading, my dog slowly stood up on the bed and began growling toward the window. I could see the hairs on the back of her neck standing straight up. I figured she was probably hearing the neighbors outside or something, so I just told her to calm down. I leaned forward to get up, maybe take a peek outside through the blinds to see if anyone was cutting through our yard or something like that. As soon as I made it to my feet, a thick, heavy feeling of dread seemed to drape over my whole body like a blanket. All I could think about was that I no longer wanted to be in that room. At the same time, I was too terrified to even move a single inch. I was still facing the window when I started seeing something appear on the wall. It was like some kind of gelatinous material. As the spots on the wall began to multiply, I could see that whatever it was, it appeared to be one mass, oozing, or maybe even phasing directly through the wall of my house, right through my lamp and table. Within a few seconds, there was a refrigerator-sized blob of amorphous, jelly-like translucent material standing in the middle of my room. No distinguishable features to it. It was mostly clear and transparent. The surface of it seemed to pulsate or vibrate inwardly, if you can imagine that. As it did, I could see the light rippling inside of its, for lack of a better term, body. The weird thing is that it appeared to be solid, 3-dimensional. It wasn't an ethereal or projected image. I feel like if I threw something at it, whatever I threw would sink right in and get stuck inside. I stared at this thing for about 30 seconds before my brain snapped back into action and told my legs to get me the hell out of that room. I ran out screaming. My dog was scared so badly that she urinated on the floor and refused to go back into the room. I was just as bad, maybe worse. I didn't want to be in that house at all. My mom had to go in later and pack a bag for me since I was afraid to go back into my own room, and they sent me to spend a week at my grandmother's house. It was an extremely frightening experience. Years later, after I moved out, my cousin stayed in my room for a couple months following his divorce. He needed time to find a new place, so my mom offered. Before long, he started sleeping with the lights on. I asked him why, and he explained that one night he woke up and saw a large man wearing dark clothes standing at the end of his bed, staring at him. He thought it was a burglar and was freaked out already, but the man turned and walked right through the closed bedroom door. Needless to say, he expedited his house hunting and moved out soon after that. A lot of unsettling things happened in that house, but that blob thing was definitely the worst, for me. I often think about how thankful I am not to be living there anymore. I know you hear a lot of stories from different people, so tell me, have you heard anything like this? I hope I never see it again. Haven't yet. But I'm still quite curious. Thanks again. Amanda. Hey there, Mr. X. I'm Joel. I wanted to tell you a story about something odd that happened to me a couple of years ago. So I have a friend who owns a summer house in the Stockholm archipelago, Sweden. It's a smaller, less popular island, so there are only around 10 people with houses there. The house my friend owns is basically a big living room with 2 small bedrooms, a kitchen, and a bathroom barely large enough for a shower cabin. The area surrounding the house is pretty well forested. Not very dense, but it's enough to block out most of the ambient light, rendering the area pitch black at night. So, my friend invited me and the guys to come out during Walpurgis night, a holiday that's sort of like a Swedish Halloween. Basically, we were going to get drunk, barbecue, and hang out by a bonfire. The celebration came and we had a good time. The food was great, and we ended up with way more alcohol than we needed. The only problem was that the bonfire got a little bit out of hand, so we sorta had to fight it back with a garden hose to avoid the grass going up in flames. Anyway, I was pretty well intoxicated by the time I decided to head for bed. I was able to pick where I wanted to sleep, since I was the first one to turn in. Naturally, I claimed one of the bedrooms. It was very basic, sparsely furnished as many summer homes tend to be. A full-size bed, nightstand, a small dresser, and a desk with a chair. There was a window that looked out into the forest, which was covered by a pull-down shade, as the morning sun shines very bright in Sweden from that direction. I pulled the shade down and laid in bed. I have this habit of listening to YouTube stories as I drift off to sleep. I hardly ever start with horror, but I almost always end up there. As I laid there in bed, one of the stories came to an end, fading into silence, leaving only the sound of rain against the bedroom window. I always love it when I could hear the rain as I fall asleep. That soothing sound makes the transition so much more wonderful, magical even, especially when you're already buzzed. Needless to say, it didn't take long before I was rolled over and out like a light. I woke up early that morning. I believe it was around 5 a.m. I crawled out of bed to search for both a toilet and something to drink, whichever came first. I knew the best I could probably hope for was some leftover flat Coke or Fanta from the night before. As I wandered through the living room, I looked out the window and could see the glow of the sun beginning to arch across the sky. The yard outside was blanketed in mist, a common sight in the archipelago. Something about the scene made me smile. I could feel it in the air that it was going to be a fine morning. I went to the bathroom and relieved myself before grabbing a glass and filling it with whatever non-alcoholic fluid I could find. As I got back to my room, placing the glass down on the table, I froze. The hair on the back of my neck stood up as I realized something about the environment was wrong. When I looked out the window a moment ago, the sky was clear, but I noticed I could still somehow hear the rain on the bedroom window. My mind searched for ways to write it off and dismiss it. I figured it was some kind of prank by the other guys in the house, or that someone left a garden hose on outside. A bit of a stretch, I know, but I needed an explanation. I stared at the window for a moment, still obscured by the drawn shade, before going back out into the living room. I did a quick head count of my friends as they lay strewn about the place, each one of them sleeping more heavily than the last. I opened a window in the living room and leaned my head out to get a look at the outside of my bedroom window. What I saw, it made me sick to my stomach. There was a cloud of what seemed to be extremely condensed mist hovering near my window. It was gray and swirled about in a somewhat unnatural way. As I looked closer, almost in shock, I could see things moving inside the mist, like something oscillating. I realized that whatever it was making the sound of what I thought was rain on my window. Still being a bit drunk, I decided that the best idea would be to go back inside my room, slide my phone up under the shade, and take a video of whatever was happening. I quietly closed the living room window and made my way back to my room. When I got there, I unlocked my phone and snuck over to the closed shade as stealthily as I could. I opened the camera app on my phone and hit record before sliding the camera up under the blinds. After about 2 minutes, I pulled the phone back to have a look. The sound of rain still hadn't stopped. I looked at the recording, and my heart began to thump like it was trying to escape my chest. I could see the gray mist outside, but I could also make out several outlines of hands tapping their fingertips against the window, imitating the sound of rain. Again, I have to stress that I was still drunk. That said, unwilling to confront whatever was outside my window, I decided that the best course of action would be to just pull my mattress out of the room and plop it down on the living room floor where my friends were still passed out. Somehow, I was able to fall right back to sleep beside them, despite what I had just witnessed. Later that day, when I finally woke up and everyone was rubbing the sleep out of their eyes, I went back to the room to see if the sound of rain would still be there. I heard nothing. I peered through the shades and saw a perfectly ordinary view of the outside landscape. Nothing whatsoever out of the ordinary. I'm ashamed to admit that I decided not to tell anyone and just deleted the video off my phone because I didn't want to think about it. After all, we had another night to spend there. Seriously though, do you have any idea what I may have seen? Was I just sleepwalking, or was this all in the mind of a drunk man? Maybe a combination of both. Anyway, thanks for listening, Mr. X. Sincerely, Joel. Alright. Greetings, friends. mr.xdreams here. I have a few words to say about these stories. First off, Amanda's story. I kind of feel what she is going through by searching for something familiar to associate with that memory that she has of that bizarre, gelatinous creature or entity or what have you. Many people have that experience where they just need to be able to put a label on something. Sometimes it's something they've seen or felt or heard about. Sometimes it's they themselves that require the label. It's kind of an unfortunate affair, part of the human condition, but it's something we all have to deal with at some point or another. So, what I found interesting about that story was the configuration of the house previously. The fact that the entity was passing through a window that used to be a door. I wonder if it's somehow, if it is connected to some type of human energy or spirit, if you would call it that. If it's trying to resume a routine that it was familiar with at some time in the past. But even if it is anything remotely human, I wonder why it's so horrendous looking. Like, is it corrupted, or has something gone horribly wrong? Whatever the fate of that person or creature or entity or being might have been, does not seem like a very pleasant one. So in a way, Amanda is living in sort of a nexus of 3 homes, 3 entire families most likely that had their own lives, their own energies and experiences associated with that space. So I wonder if it's possibly a nexus of another kind as well, with so many different lives passing through that house. How many spirits never found their way out, and how many, whether by accident or on purpose, found their way back to that house. On a less serious note, I originally thought that this entity might have been some version or kind of ectoplasm. So I looked up the word ectoplasm on Bing. Don't judge me. And I found that it's actually widely thought to be a supernatural substance that emanates from the body of a spirit medium, which then constitutes or coagulates into the form of a deceased person that's being channeled by said spirit medium. So what I found in the image section of Bing under ectoplasm was some of the dopest, most OG Photoshop jobs I've ever seen. I'm talking about vintage, black and white, what appears to be early 20th century, very early 20th century at least. Photoshop, essentially. It was Photoshop before there was such a thing as Photoshop, before the first computer was invented, seemingly. These people were out here taking cotton or linen veils and wispy fabric, putting it in people's mouths and on top of their heads, and then superimposing the photos, or what appear to be the photos of, I assume, dead relatives of people trying to do seances and so on and so forth, to make it look like the spirits are being channeled. So on film, it almost looks like a bizarre kind of ethereal, stringy and fluffy light material emanating from these people, or coming out of their nose or their ears or their mouth, coming out of their head. And there's very cleverly, nicely airbrushed photographs of the people who have passed away, superimposed onto these masses of cotton or linen. And I even saw what looked like a kind of a crappier one of these examples, but like a cloud of cotton balls with a dog's face on it. So I imagine someone was trying to contact their deceased dog. And that's really, I guess that was the best they could do back then. But they really were ahead of their time with, as far as, meme status. And if they had only gone the one step further and began creating memes with that technology, that early Photoshop, this world would be a very different place. Memes would be even more deeply ingrained into our existence than they already are. So now for Joel's experience. I honestly hope he was imagining it somehow. I personally don't know much about being drunk because I tend to prefer to be in control of my faculties at all times in case someone tries to attack me or the people I care about, or even just people around me in general. I don't like being out of it in public, especially. That said, I would still have to imagine that if I did get video evidence of an extremely creepy and undeniably paranormal event, I'd like to think I would have the presence of mind to hold on to that rather than delete it, no matter what awkward situation I was trying to avoid. I will say, though, that I understand at least why he wouldn't want to think about it if he was going to be staying there another night. But, I mean, come on. Most people would have probably been just gotten out of that place altogether. I know I would have. And if it was me, I would probably be on my way to some government agency like NASA or something like that. And before that, I'd be uploading the footage to YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and probably set up a Snapchat just to add that into the mix. And just to let people know the deal, if you know what I mean. I would want that information to get out as soon as possible, and I'm sure you could all guess why. I bet my channel would blow up after that, actually. So, in summation with that story, I know it's generally not easy to trust the memory or testimony of a drunk man, but it was a very interesting and, to me, a very creepy story, so I wanted to share it with you guys anyway. And it got even creepier for me when I really thought about it, because I wondered if the sound of the rain late at night that he fell asleep to, I wonder if that sound was being generated also by those creepy disembodied fingertips and fingernails tapping on his window, because he was speaking so fondly of the sound of rain and things like that, and how lovely it is to fall asleep to. And I agree wholeheartedly. I love that. There's nothing that puts me more at ease when I'm laying down to go to sleep and suddenly it starts raining. That's pretty much the best thing, other than the sound of construction, like hardcore, heavy-duty building construction. That puts me to sleep as well for some reason. It's like an ASMR thing. I don't get it, but it works. And because I grew up around construction quite a bit. But anyway, in other news, my Project Puppy Dog is well underway at this point. If you follow me on Twitter, you're probably aware of that. I have most of the lines I need for the story in my inbox by now, and I do have an actual little girl who is going to be playing a role, and she needs a little bit of voice acting training, so that might take a little bit more time. But I want to go all out and be authentic with this as much as possible, so we're going to make it happen. I believe in her. I know she can do it. As always, remember, if you want to pick up some Mr. X Dreams merch and represent the dreamers out there, the link to my Teespring store is in the description. If you end up getting something, make sure you send me a picture of yourself wearing it or using it, depending on whether you got a shirt or a pillow or a mug or a print or anything like that. And I will feature you in a video and or a live stream, probably both, at some point or another, with a cool set of glowing white eyes like mine. So, word of advice for the day is, I guess, to be a skeptic. That's what I recommend anyway. Always question people and things and what anyone tries to sell you. Even me, to be honest. Though I will always maintain an open mind, I don't and would never present much of what I speak to you about on this channel as being absolute truth or fact. My only requirement, honestly, when I'm looking at a story, is that the person sharing the story for me to write is honest in that they believe what happened to them was or may have been real, because if it's real to them, that's good enough for me. So never be afraid to question anyone or anything. In my opinion, nothing should be off limits. If it's legit, it will stand up to your questioning and criticism and whatever you have to throw at it. Don't get taken for a ride you didn't want to get on. Anyway, friends, I hope you're all well. Until next time, I'm Mr. X, and may your nights be full of dreams. By the way, that ectoplasm was pretty slimy. For you, my ride or die follower, today's code word is slimy. Use it in a comment down below so I know what you're about. Love you guys. Later.